Esther Harris, Diane McCarthy. Now, Esther, you've been involved in the education and disability world for a while, just trying to get better things. But I want to go back to the beginning because for really a very long time we've had this principle that disabled children should be in mainstream schools, and yet that's not always what's happening. Can you just tell us a little bit about the early days when, support first came and there was that push to get into mainstream?
Well, I think is that on?
Yeah.
I think it probably, during the 70s, there was a move from community groups, organisations like STAR, Action Group, organisations, and with some on-site teachers and professionals saying this is, this should happen. And I mean, I was reminded of just how often children with disabilities were not in school, in that where Rosie Crosley talked about going into the institutions and the children being there, and there was no schooling. They weren't offered any education. In fact, it was determined that they were unable to be educated, and even if they were, what could they learn and what could they do? And I think towards the end of the 1970s, some figures I looked at, there were about 300 or 400 children in institutions who received no education at all, and there was an unknown number of children who were living at home, not in institutions, who also weren't in any school setting, whether it was a special school or a special developmental school or whatever they were called in those days. And so building on that momentum that was coming up from the community with the election of the Kane government in 1982, Robert Fordham, who was the Minister for Education at that time, commissioned a report and a review into the education of children with disabilities. It was called the education of the disabled children, but we don't use that. I prefer to say children with disabilities, even though that was on the title of the report. And out of that, the key aspects that the review was to look at was how to increase the participation of students or young people with a disability in mainstream schools, and participating in all elements of it, not just the educational aspects but the social life too. But the other aspect of it was how could policy and best practice not only increase but maintain and enhance and improve the education. And that was the basis and the elements of the review. And at that stage, Victoria could be said at that stage to be one of the leading countries in the world in inclusive, or what was called integration at that stage. Sadly, over the years we've slipped back, and I'm sad to say that we don't hold that world position. Now, one of the things that came out of the review, is that right? I'm talking to them and not looking at you.
No, you're talking maybe just take your microphone a little bit further away from your, because you're getting a lot of.
Right. So one of the first things that came out of the review was the identification of 5 guiding principles. And of course, preparing for this, I've had a chance to go back and look at the guiding principles. And they were, and this was what to underpin the policy and practice in 1982, all children have the right to attend what was called a regular school, but what we would call the mainstream schooling. Called non-categorisation. So any resources, funding, anything should be directed to the child's educational needs, not the categorisation or the description of their disability. That families, parents, principal, teachers and the students should all be involved in making collaborative decisions about the child's education. The fourth one was that the resources should be placed as close to the school as possible. So speech therapy, occupational therapy, the additional resources were in the school. That's where kids learn. And the fifth one, most important, everybody can learn, all children can learn and all children can be taught. And I'd like to say that 34 years ago that was, and I'd suggest, more than suggest, I would absolutely say that in 2016 those should be the 5 guiding principles that underpin anything that we're doing.
I think, in many ways we've lost sight of that all children can learn and all children, have potential. I wanted to just go back because I think increasingly, there's actually an increase in numbers in children in SDSs and special schools. You told me a story about Kevin's role in Cobram. Can you talk a little bit about that?
Kevin Stone, who many of you will know, in 1979 was the principal at Cobram SDS. And as part of the gathering momentum about that, there was an initiative at Cobram that Kevin was involved in to move the children in Cobram SDS into the schools in Cobram. Cobram's a rural area, as you'd know, along the Murray, up in the north part of the state. By 1971, every child in that school, Cobram SDS, had been moved into either a government or Catholic secondary school in the area, the primary school, and even kindergarten children over 2 years. So it can be done. It can be done.
And he'd done himself out of a job by the sounds of it.
Well, no, the resources,
happily.
I was talking to Kevin about this, the resources, the teachers of the special school, the teachers went across to support the teachers in the mainstream classrooms, and the buildings over at the Cobram SDS were used for craft and all sorts of things from the school. But unfortunately, I googled the other day on the internet when I was looking for this, and Cobram SDS still exists. So I think after Kevin left, and Kevin went on to do other things, but after that it all went back.
Yeah. Di, I'd like to move on to you. You've got both personal experience, like me, having a son who has a disability and went through mainstream education, but you've also, in your role at the Association for Children with Disability, supported a lot of parents one-on-one and systemically. And I know when I worked at the Association for Children with Disability, so many of those calls were about problems in the education system. And can you talk a little bit about the kinds of things that have progressed, but the issues that we're still facing too?
Thanks, Sarah. I'd like to say thank you, firstly, for the video, the taster, for the
documentary.
And as a parent, I think that what really strikes in my heart is that families were torn apart from their children, and their children were placed in places that they should never have been. And I think that as your documentary progresses, that you'll see the change. And I want to thank the rights, the people who have advocated before my son. He's got a wheelchair and scooter pass for his to go on the train.
Oh yes, and as has my daughter, and it's freedom. It's such a freedom thing.
But I take that for granted, don't I? Because that happened. But I want to thank everybody who was chaining themselves to a tram or a train, or to be out there for children like mine and yours, and for children in the future. And I think that that's the nature of the rights movement now, is that there should be stronger numbers behind those protests in the future, if they happen. So I just want to say thank you for that. So in relation to my work at the Association for Children with a Disability, yes, look, it's a grassroots advocacy agency that started in that manner, and having a son with multiple disabilities, I made choices myself in relation to the education system, and was a little bit about in the forefront of taking steps for him to be in the mainstream, and also joined onto a committee of management that was about parents of children with a disability advocating for the rights of their children to be children, and to be in their local neighbourhood, and to be participating in all aspects of their life in local neighbourhood. But they also had to deal with the remnants of education systems, and to change the education system in front of them as well. So I'd have to say, in the 20 years that I've been working there, the issues primarily are still the same. So that the nature of motherhood statements about children's rights to be in education system, to be in a community system, the community school, they haven't changed. Children have got their rights to be there. It's about the leadership in the schools and the will of those leaders to embrace the needs of those children, and to ensure that they're educated like any other child. Children don't have special needs in relation to education. They need an education, and that's the primary focus for all children in an education setting. They need adjustments. They certainly need people to understand what their needs are, and they need people to support those access needs to gain a quality education. And that's the role that we play in empowering families with information about their rights, and ensuring that they feel safe to challenge people who are not making those adjustments for them.
I think, certainly my experience in, talking to you sometimes and when we've had issues, because I don't think any child with a disability goes through a whole school system without having issues, and we've all had our issues. And for me, the really important thing was to get that confidence to be able to go and say, actually, no, we have the right to this. You're not doing it the way it should be done. How can we make this work? Something else I wanted to say also is that so often it comes from the principal, the school principal. School principals play a huge role. You sort of think, what does the school principal do? But in fact, they set the tone and the culture in the school. Absolutely. Where, a child is included, where the teachers understand that it's absolutely part of their job, or else they don't do that, and that's when you've got problems.
And I'd also like to say we're... the Association for Children with a Disability started as Action Group for Disabled Children. A lot has changed in 30 years, including the World Wide Web and the access to information. And when you think about the Action Group back then, they were trying to fundraise for a typewriter and a photocopier and a fax machine.
Sounds so quaint.
It does sound quaint. It's not that long ago, it's 30 years is just gone. And so information technology puts us in a better place and in a stronger place as individuals to not only unite together but also to share information and to have our rights upheld, because just at the flick of a Twitter or a tweet or a Twitch or whatever, you can connect with so many people and be a lot more effective now than the old Roneo photocopier that we used to have in those days. And so we're a much more connected society now. So there's lots of hope for the future.
Definitely.
I think, yeah.
Esther, you look like you're desperate. You've got something to contribute that you...
Thinking of some of the things Di was saying, STAR's been around for 45 years and education has been a very significant part of its work. Yes, I mean, the woman who started STAR was Ethel Temby, and it was no coincidence that Ethel was a teacher and a progressive teacher in that, in fact, even before she had a child with a disability, she campaigned in the streets to abolish capital punishment in schools, and we're talking about 1930s, 1940s.
Oh, dear.
And many of the issues are the same.
Do you mean corporal punishment?
Yeah, what did I say?
I had this awful thought and I thought, that's terrible. Did they really kill children in the 1930s? And then I realised...
No, sorry. Oh, well. Yeah. Yes, and much of our work is the same. I think we support families with families of people with an intellectual disability. And I think as a society, we have come a way. We've got a lot further to go in acknowledging and recognising people with physical disabilities, sensory disabilities, but we've still got a long way to go with people with an intellectual disability, and it's the real blocker back at schools. People can see the adjustments they make with visual, hearing, got all of that technology, physically we can build ramps, but the intellectual disability area is one where people, back off from, and that's where the blockers come. I wanted to just say that one of the things that I do remember from the early days, that when you took your child to school back in the 80s, the principal was required, and the guideline, they weren't guidelines in those days, it was mandatory. The first thing the principal had to do was enrol the child. Don't look at what resources you might need, you actually enrolled the child like any other child was enrolled. Then you went and looked at what resources there were in the school, and then you went and looked elsewhere. Mm-hmm. But it was absolutely mandatory. The very first thing the principal did before ask anything else, just like it would do for any other child, enrol the child in the school. And I think the other thing some of you will be familiar with Bob Jackson's work. Bob Jackson from Western Australia, and he talks about inclusive education is about the will, the skill and the capacity. Now I think, yes, we need teachers that are skilled, and the system needs to skill, all of that sort of thing, and we need capacity and resourcing. But if you can have the skill and you can have all the resourcing, but if you don't have the will, nothing happens. And I think that goes back to some of the leadership of the principal. If the will is not there, then all of the resourcing, all of the skills the teachers have just go nowhere.
Well, thank you, ladies. We've got one more segment to go after we have another song, but I'd like you all to thank Diane McCarthy and Esther Harris for their insight into education.